that's all defrosted. I'm going to give it a quick clean before the next batch. These last two batches was the chocolate mousse and chocolate chip cookies, peanut butter chocolate chip cookies, and then the rice and hash brown potatoes. And this is all the water from both batches. So there's only a couple pounds of water from both batches. And that's why I didn't bother defrosting or even turning the machine off between the batches. I just arrowed through it and then restarted it immediately because it just didn't have to worry about the defrost with only that much. But now I am going to pull the seal and pull the rack and give everything a quick wipe down with some bleach water to make sure everything's still nice and clean. It still feels good. It's been quite a few batches since I cleaned it. I figured a quick wipe down wouldn't hurt. I'll get all the components out. And as I've mentioned a few times, I don't like to take the seal off. I take it off just as rarely as possible so that I don't have any chance for it to have a seal problem or to damage the seal. The seal is going to need to be replaced at some point, and I do have a spare already. I got that at maybe a year ago so that I'd be ready. It's going to happen at some point because it's getting older. So I'm going to very gently pull the seal off. Okay, and I have a mark at the top on mine so that I know that it's at the top. My opening on here is not perfectly round, so my little plastic shield that I put in there is also not perfectly round. It's had to be about an 1/8 inch out of round to seal all the way around the edge. My first test one was perfectly round and it had gaps up to about 1/8 of an inch, so 3-4 millimeters around there. So it didn't seal well. I'll get this out. Get it disconnected. And I know there's different connector styles. This is what they had at the time of mine. So I'll get that set aside and I'll wipe this whole thing down and get it ready to go back in also. So I'll just wipe down all the surfaces of it and get it ready. So then I use just a little tie to hold the cord up out of the way so I can wipe out the chamber portion of it. I've got the drain hose just into a container, and so I've got my hot water with a tablespoon of bleach in it. I'm just going to drain some of it right through first to start cleaning out all the drain components. And then I'm going to turn the drain valve off, and with that closed, then I can pour in a little bit more and leave a little puddle in here, and I'll use that for the cleaning, and that's going to fill up the drain hose all the way down to the valve, which will help disinfect any of that area. So then I'm just going to use that little puddle and wiping it all down real quick. So I'm going to make sure I don't get it into any of the other openings. The one for the vacuum is over here, and for the various sensors and cords and wires are up there. So then I'm going to drain that out and then refill it and do that again. Rinse and repeat. So I'll do that 2 or 3 times just to make sure. Okay, so I've got my little cleaner brush here and just cleaning out the drain areas. I'll just pour some down there again. Then just the rinse water. I'll pour a little puddle into the bottom. I'll just go ahead and wipe it all down again. So I've got everything cleaned and rinsed. I've cleaned the rack. It's ready to go back in. So we'll get that back in there. Get that reconnected. Okay, and then I can carefully slide it back in place. All right, and then I can get these side pieces in place. It's what I'm using to help keep the ice from touching the heated plate. Put those back in there, and I've got little clips on them. And that seems to help keep the ice from hitting that and then resublimating and going through the cycle again. Now I can get the seal back in place, and I have my little line at the top. So it goes at the top of that to line up with that screw, and you get it started, and I don't push it on there very hard. So with nice clean water, just going around that. And it's important to be lint free, so if you see any lint on it, and maybe something other than a paper towel would be a better choice, but that's what I've got. I'm going to use the door itself to finish putting the seal in place. So just push that gently. Okay, I've got a beautiful ring around there, so it's a great seal. So I use that to push it into place. Okay, it's all set and ready to go. We'll get it pre-cooling. Ready for the next batch. I can shut the drain valve again. So I'm using Customize. You could use Start. Using Customize and Start and Continue. I forgot to put the thermometer in, so I'm going to go ahead and open that up and put that underneath. It says that it's currently 66 degrees. Won't take too long to get cold enough to put the food in, so we'll be back. These are the parchments from the last batch that just had the minute rice and hash browns, so we're just reusing those. Those are completely dry and clean. Tray 1. Rice and chicken with vegetables. So that what both of these are, or all of these are? That's what this tray is going to be, yes. Except for a piece at the front. All of the part pieces will be this, probably.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to just put half pieces. I'm going to label that the half blocks are that, so we'll be able to find them again. Okay, oh, that's great. So 1927. For tray 1. That's a little bit more than 2.5 pounds, which is great. And tray 2, labeling it miscellaneous meals. Ham and pasta vegetable soup.
Yes, I have 2 holes.
So I'm going to tuck the label under there. Okay. And 1826 on that one. And tray 3, and the trays are still nice and chilly from being in the freezer. I'm going to go ahead and put the tag underneath. Ham and pasta and vegetable soup. Because you usually write yours with a felt pen, don't you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I write mine with a pencil because I don't mind eating graphite. I mean, literally, that's why I do the pencil, because I always think, well, if it comes off on it, I don't care.
That's it.
Yeah. 1930. Gosh, I hate not putting thermometers in there, but getting them in there is going to be tough. I might not do it. And tray 4. Chicken and rice and veggies. And so all of the half ones are the same thing. So we just have the one label under the 1/2 one to tell us what that is. Making a little shield area here. We've got a area here, and going to put some Bit-O honeys on those. So 1527 for that tray. Going with no thermometers on this set, just because the kind of difficult to put them in, and so I'm just not going to this time. It's never required, so we'll move them over there and get them loaded in. It's been pre-freezing for almost an hour and 20 minutes already, or just over an hour and 20, and it's down to negative 20 degrees. So way past time to get things in. So we'll get them in there before they have a chance to warm up anymore. And this time, no thermometers in there, so I won't be able to tell what the temperature of the food is. That will be weird and potentially a bad idea. Maybe when we go to check it, I'll try to tuck thermometers in there when I don't have to drill them. Okay, so starting at the bottom. Tray 4. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they puff up enough to hit the shelf above. Okay, and do we have a seal? So making sure I have a seal ring all the way around. There was one little spot that was a little sparse there, so now it's all the way around. Without having thermometers in there, I will have no idea what the temperature of the food is. So I'm going to probably give it extra time, because I know from experience that the temperature that it shows on the display is not the temperature of the food. It's the temperature underneath the next to the bottom shelf. It's a completely different temperature than the food, and the top tray is considerably warmer than the bottom tray. It can be 30 or 40 degrees difference. So you can have a reading on that on the display of negative 30 when the food is still showing 0 or positive 10. It's a huge difference. And that's one of the things I use the thermometers for. It seems weird not having a thermometer in there. We'll get it chilling and I'll watch that thermometer, and I'll make sure that it gets to at least 40 below for an hour or so before I let it start. And then it'll be done in a couple of days. I'll be back in a couple of days. Don't go away. Unless we see something really exciting in there, then we'll try to get video of that. This batch has been in there for 45.5 hours so far, but the freeze drying has been paused for 6 hours now. It was going to finish late last night, and I added 5 more hours, so that gave it a 16 hours of final dry time. But it's still been another 6 hours ago that it finished, and I wasn't here to check it. So I'm going to rewarm it, then get the weights, because right now those trays are going to be something like 40 below 0. And the instant I open the door, going to get condensation on them and add water to it, and that's the last thing we want. So we'll get them rewarmed enough so that that won't happen, at least 60-80 degrees in Fahrenheit, and then get them back in there for a weight check. So first we'll get it restarted, and then we'll come back in just a few minutes. The bottom thermometer touching the barrel is lower than negative 40 right now. And we'll get it started and see what that tray temperature says. And again, it says 45.5 hours. The actual time so far is only 39.5 hours, and I'll track that part of it. Even this rewarm and everything. If when we do the check everything's dry, I'm going to use 39.5 hours, and it was probably dry before that. But for now, more dry time. Continue. Okay, and what does it tell you? It says that it's negative 58 in there right now, and the heaters are already on. It's starting to warm right away. But yeah, if I had taken those out right now, it would have just instantly been covered with condensation. In fact, the condensation probably would have froze to ice almost instantly too, because negative 56 or 58 is awfully cold. And if I didn't use gloves, I'd probably get little cold burn spots on my fingers too. Been there, done that. One of the pluses of putting thermometers in the food is for times like this when I need to rewarm it. I have no idea and no way of telling what the temperature of the food is. So I'm going to have to rely on the thermometer underneath, and that's not going to tell me the temperature of the food at all, because that temperature probe is between the heater pad and the shelf itself. So it's like the warmest spot you could possibly pick. it doesn't tell me anything about the temperature of the food while it's heating. So having the thermometers in the food, I could have looked at those and known what the temperature of the food itself was, and I'd know if I'd warmed it enough. So I'm going to just have to rely on some experience and go maybe an hour to make sure that it's warm enough, because otherwise I have no way to tell. The machine's thermometer says that it's 110 degrees now. I'm going to trust that the food is warm enough that there won't be any condensation problem when we take it out and weigh it for the weight check. So I'm going to take it out, get it weighed, get it back in there quickly. You can see the pressure's low. It's almost 110 degrees currently. The heater is off right now, so that's going to be dropping a little bit as it cycles on and off. So I'm going to arrow past the rest of it. Open the drain valve.
Yeehaw!
Oh, got to do that part. Okay. And I am going to switch the outside tube to the inside tube. So tray 1, and it's toasty warm. It's 1098. Okay, and I'm going to switch it with tray 2, 997 minus a little, so it went down a little bit. And so tray 2, I'm going to put up here. And it looks wonderful. You can see all the little pasta shells in there, and looks like, I think these are pork or something. I don't really know what she made, but anyway, pasta. I can see peas and corn, some kind of meat in there, and the pasta shells, and a sauce. Looks really good. And then I don't know what this kind is. Yeah, anyway, it looks real good. So we'll get that on the top shelf, and this one down. Okay, this one is a rice dish, so rice, and I can see, looks like maybe carrots and peas, some kind of little bits of meats in there. So again, looks really good. Okay, tray 3, and tray 3 looks just about the same as tray 2 did, same kinds of stuff. 1019, and tray 4. And tray 4 is noticeably cooler than the others. 1034. Okay, so I'm going to put this one up on the next shelf up. And you can see her bit of honey ones looked real nice. Could have probably put one more in a row. So I'm going to put that up on this shelf, and then tray 3 will come down here. So get that back in there and get that closed. Close the drain valve. I'm going to give it more time. I did close it, and continue and start. Everything felt warm and dry, and I have no doubt that it's dry. It's had a lot of extra time. That was another hour and a half, plus the extra 5 hours before, plus it was a long final dry of 11 hours. So now it's got 17 and a half hours of final dry time. There's really, it'd be surprising if it weren't dry, but I'm still gonna check it. Okay, we'll be back in just a couple hours. So a few seconds to you, don't go away, I'll be right back. So it's been just over 2 hours. Now it's time to check them and say that how dry they were hours and hours ago, but we don't know how long ago. If they didn't lose weight, we're definitely using at least 2 hours ago time. In fact, actually we'll use last night's time after we added the 5 hours, because everything else has just been rewarming and then final dry. So we'll use hours ago. So let's get them out, check them. Okay, you can see it's down to less than 5, or just at 5 minutes. It says it's 95 degrees. The heaters have been off for 10 minutes. Pressure's really low. We'll bypass that last bit. Open the drain valve. and get them checked. So, tray 1. Ta-da! It says 1097, so it's lost up to 1 whole gram in 3.5 hours. Okay, let's check tray 2, and that's a beautiful tray of food. 997, no change, so that's great. Tray 3, okay, and 1018. That's the one that was at 1019. I put minus because it kept bouncing down to 1018. And finally, tray 4. 1033. And it's also a fraction down. But with 3.5 hours and it being less than 1 gram, I don't see a problem with those. Keep this over here to write down the time and power usage. So get these rolled over and then get the weights in a minute after we get the power. I'll stop it with no defrost. So unplug the filtration pump timer. Get the thermometer out from underneath. And get the baffle into place. And the defrost fan in. So the total time it shows it running is 49.25 hours. However, it was 39.5 hours before the rewarm this morning. So I'm going to use the 39.5 hours as the amount of time, because the rest of it, most of the rest of that was just sitting, running, waiting for me to come down and restart it to check it. So I'm going to assume it was dry after that 39.5. So I'm using 39.5, or yeah, 39.5. This is what it shows for the power usage for that batch. Again, that's meals and some other candy stuff. So it shows 30.41 kilowatt hours. That's not exactly accurate as to how much time it took to do that batch, because it was considerably less. So if you'd have taken out when it was actually done, which is 10 hours ago, that would be considerably less. So I'll reset it, get it ready for the next one. Okay, and now it's ready for the next set. We've got all the math done for that batch, and I can share that. We started with 4216 grams. It's currently 1151. So we had a water loss of 3065. So that's the total weight that got taken out in water. Because of what she has, the miscellaneous things, most of them were pre-weighed. So, let's bring one over. Or measured. You measure, right? Okay, not pre-weighed. Usually she measures 2 cups and 1 cup increments because it's just right for how she uses them. So she can bag them the same way in 2 cup, or she could crumble them up and weigh it into portions, or however it works, or even put multiple ones into a bigger bag if she has any reason to do that, which sometimes happens. And part of that happens sometimes because you don't want to crush things up, so you put them in there. For instance, batch number, what it is, with a big long description. That's why I use short descriptions on mine. My writing becomes illegible by the time I get that far. And that it's about 2 cups. And sometimes we use these bigger bags because we don't want to have to crush them up. So with this kind of thing, you could slip 2 of those in there or more real easily. In fact, I think you can get 3 of these in this kind of bag pretty easily. But anyway, that way you don't have to crush it up, and you can see there's pretty big pieces of meat in there. If you crushed it into one of the little bags like this, you would be really shredding that up, and you might not want that. So that's part of our bag size decision sometimes, is what is the product, and are we worried about being crushed? With rice and vegetables, chances are you're not going to damage it by breaking it in half or if depending on the sauce, some of the sauces will break apart easily, and so then you can have it more loose to put in smaller bags. These feel pretty strong. So those, but it's still, with the little pieces, you're not going to break anything up very much. Okay, so that, oh, and probably need to start with this one. So that it, and so this is what the Bit O' Honeys came out like. And they were done a long time ago. These don't take anywhere near that amount of time. There's not that much water. They did real well, but we left them in there while waiting for everything else. So, give a before and after. So, yeah. So they came out really nice. They feel nice and light, and it looks like, since they don't seem terribly sticky on the outside, it looks like we could have gotten away with getting 6 on a row like that. So they might end up touching, but anything that did touch, they still didn't stick. So I think on this tray you could go 6 wide. Yeah, I think you could get away with 6 wide pretty easily. And kind of a little bit closer, but you don't want so many of them that they overlap and push out, because then it really gets messy everywhere else. So don't do that way. Okay, so these are the sugary ones. These are probably the ones that need to get bagged first. They're the ones that are just begging for water out of the air. You can bag them the way you will. Oh, that's beautiful inside. Oh, that's great.
Nice, airy.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
That is beautiful.
Still has the good flavor, too.
That's better than the other way. Oh, it melts in your mouth. These are great. Excuse me. Okay. So these really come out nice. And this is another example of a candy that's better freeze-dried than it was before it was freeze-dried. Like Skittles. Skittles are much better freeze-dried than they are plain, as far as I'm concerned. And these are too. That came out nice. Wow. Look at that. That is beautiful. All the little pasta shells and the peas and carrots and meat bits in between.
That one's ham.
Really came out nice. Got to be careful of the snackcidents. It's not too bad if you do the snackcident. The problem is if somebody else has a snackcident, then there's no bacon for you. That's the problem. I don't mind if I accidentally eat all the bacon. I just mind if you accidentally eat all the bacon. Because especially, oh, the pepper bacon. Oh, that's so good. The meals are in the bags and ready to put in the bin. And also, the little Bit O' Honeys are bagged in there, 4 little pieces. Those are really good. I would do those again. And they don't take anywhere near that amount of time, but since they were mixed in with the batch of meals, we kind of had to leave them in there for the whole time. They looked done in a relatively few hours. And I know the new machines have a setting specifically for candy stuff like this, and it's very quick. But the older machines will do it just fine. It might take a little longer, but it does a good job, and it doesn't take anywhere near the amount of time that these other things take. It just takes a few hours. Okay, we'll move over here, get everything in the bin as best we can, and see what we can do with that. We're pretty close to the top. Going to check this. So what I'm going to do is just put it on very lightly and slowly. I want to make sure that it's not squishing up. I can feel that it's okay, it's all the way on. It's a little bit bulgy right there, but not too bad. Now, and I think everything would be safe. And then as the oxygen is absorbed out of this top layer of bags, it's going to shrink down a little bit. So I think that's all good. But another thing you can do is if you turn this upside down, you gain about a 3/4 of an inch to an inch of height, because then this portion sits on this rail, and then this whole center area ends up raised slightly. So you could put it on like this, and there's lots of extra space in there. Now, it does make it so you can't stack them, but the lid is on there good. You could still zip tie it through these holes. It has holes all the way around the sides, and you could zip tie it or fasten it through there. It still fits on the same shelf that we're using, so that gives the extra space if you need that. Otherwise, this one just makes it, especially if you put it on a top layer so you're not stacking anything on it. But it feels like it's not squishing anything, it's not crushing anything. So it fit. All 6 batches fit, and that's a lot of bags. That's a whole lot of bags. I'll tell you how many bags of that in just a second. This bin has wet weight of food of about 70 pounds when you take into account the minute rice and the hash brown potatoes, which were dry, because that was about 27 pounds worth in that batch. So over 70 pounds of food of the wet weight, and it's 121 bags in this bin. That's cool. Okay, so moving on. That's probably just layers of grease on top, just pure fat. Oh.
Oh, I will slap you.
Okay, it could be ice. Let's see if that works. So we started with 21. Again, you got to use the numbers in the correct order. It's 4216.